Hello and welcome to Tech 101. I'm Eric Hesseldahl, Senior Technology Writer here at BusinessWeek.com. This is our weekly podcast where we answer your questions about technology, so do send us your questions. We have a question this week from someone who calls himself Confused, and he happens to be from Canada, so I'm going to call him Confused in Canada. He's writing to ask about handheld devices, so let's go ahead and get to his question. Dear Tech 101, I've lately been interested in upgrading my cell phone to a Blackberry or a Treo. My service provider is Verizon. I want to use a new device for work, text messages, and as an organizer. Which of the two do you recommend? I've done some research and talked to friends who have both, and they complain about the Windows Mobile software on the Treo, but the Blackberry 8830, which Verizon offers, has no camera, which I do want. Any suggestions? Confused in Ontario, Canada. So what's it going to be? Blackberry or a Treo? Well, let's talk about the relative merits, one versus the other. You're absolutely right. The Blackberry devices on Verizon do not have cameras. This is an 8700. It's not on Verizon, it's on T-Mobile, but most of the Blackberry devices that are available from Verizon haven't yet incorporated cameras. And so, now this is a Treo. This one happens to be on Sprint. It's one that runs the Palm OS, and we'll get to that in a second. But most of the Treos, you'll see, they do have a camera. Here's a little camera right up here in the corner. So, question is, what's most important to you? So let's talk a little bit about the relative merits of a Blackberry. Now, I should say up front, I'm a Blackberry guy, but for a lot of years I was a Palm person. So I like the Treo. There's nothing wrong with it. First things first, you want to make sure you're happy with the keyboard. So whichever device you decide to go with, play around with the keyboard. Ask your friends to let you type some messages on it or something. I would say about half your happiness with the device is being happy with the keyboard. So that's an important point. If you're comfortable with the keyboard, you can be comfortable with the device. Now, let's talk about each one versus the other. You really can't beat the Blackberry for email simplicity. You say you want to use it for work email. You really can't beat the basic setup of the Blackberry for email. Now the Treo will also come with Good Mail, which is very Blackberry-like. It'll push your work email out to the device. Works very simply, very easily, just as well. So they're relatively equal on that front. Now if you're willing to switch service providers, there are other models of the Blackberry that do have cameras. Blackberry Pearl, Blackberry Curve, both have cameras. Up in Canada, they're available from Rogers. Down here in the States, they're available from AT&T and from T-Mobile. Now let's talk a little bit about the Treo for a second. The Treo does run Microsoft Windows Mobile, but you also have another option available to you with the Treo. That's a Palm OS. And that's what I've got here. It's a slightly older model. This one happens to be with Sprint. And so you do have this available to you from Verizon as well. It's a Treo 700p. Runs the Palm operating system, which is basically the legacy of the old Palm Pilot from the 90s that you remember. And it's a little bit older, but it still gets by pretty well. It's an excellent operating system, has a lot of software developed for it, lots of organizer software, lots of other interesting applications that you can load onto it, and it's got that camera that you want. So if for whatever reason you don't want to go with the Microsoft Windows Mobile software, and a lot of people think it's clunky, believe me, I certainly am no big fan of it, but you can definitely go with the Palm OS and try out the Palm Treo 700p. So what I would do is I would go back to the Verizon store in your area, ask them to show you the Palm Treo 700p and take a look at that. And if they don't have that anymore, you might take a look at maybe switching providers if that's available to you. There's some new models out from Palm that also run the Palm OS and have cameras. Definitely worth a look for you. So what it seems like it's coming down to for you is if the camera is a deal breaker and you got to have it, you're going to be picking a Treo. So you have more than one choice. You have the 700WX, which runs Microsoft Windows Mobile, which you can get from Verizon, or the 700p, which runs the Palm OS software. So it sounds to me like you're settling on a Treo. If you're willing to change providers and want to still stick with a Blackberry, take a look at the Pearl, take a look at the Curve. Up in